So welcome everyone to this video podcast where we're going to be talking about how emotions affect adoption in the digital workplace. I'm John Scott, I'm the head of user experience at Content Formula, and we're a digital workplace consultancy. We basically design, build and maintain intranets and other digital tools for companies to help them do those things better. And I'm here today with Lucy, who is our guest, Lucy Selby. And Lucy, maybe I can ask you to introduce yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Lucy Selby. I've been working at Fidelity International for about 13 years now. I'm a senior technical consultant. Most of my time is spent in the automation, employee experience space, digital employee experience space. I also do solution design and service design. Most of the work that I do is around the corporate enabler group, so technology services, HR and legal, and insurance services.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Lucy. Yeah. And so tell us what got you interested in looking at the impact of emotions on like the usage of applications, broadly speaking.
Well, so we've been on a bit of a journey with this, actually. We were replatforming one of our technology offerings. And as we were in that space of change, we thought, this is a really good time to just check in with our user base and find out how we're doing. Are the services good? Is the interface good? How do people feel about it? And we thought, this is an opportunity. So we expanded that remit and we brought in a research partner. And I gave them a very, very broad remit, which they're probably still cursing me for today, which is just, tell us how people feel about using our services. I didn't want to limit it. I wanted it to be really broad and for people to just feel free to tell us what they thought and how they felt. And they really did. It was just absolutely fascinating. And yeah, just unlocked this brand new area of interest for me.
And what sort of what was that application that you were kind of developing at that time or trying to measure the emotional response to?
And yes, that was our technology self-service portal. So where people go to, order kit or request permissions or access to things, self-serve and install software, things like that.
And how many kind of like people are we talking about who might be using that? Do you know the sort of rough size of that audience?
Yeah, so it's a global product, so it's used by everyone at Fidelity, which is about 12,000 people.
Okay, wow, yeah, so
across I think 27 countries at last count.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And so, what was like the sort of process for understanding that? Then, what did you need to do?
So the research partner did a number of exercises. We had a relatively small group of participants by, I think, most people's standards, but since digging into it, I found that actually it's a really decent sample size. You don't need a significant percentage to start seeing trends. So we had a group of participants. We were really careful to get people involved from all the global areas, all the countries, all areas of the business, all levels of seniority, etc. And we had small group exercises, large group exercises, and one-on-one interviews and research exercises that we did. So it was over, I think, the course of 2 or 3 months, just having a number of different sessions with people. This was really important because there'll be the dynamics of the group completely change depending on how many people are present. You'll have certain people that are really comfortable speaking up in a small group of 3 or 4 people, but would never speak, in a larger group, and perhaps wouldn't be so candid one-to-one. But a small group can create a higher degree of psychological safety, so people feel a lot more comfortable sharing, and it really just depends how that person feels comfortable. So you get really different results according to the different group sizes. So that's why we approached it in that manner.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've also found that when doing our research into sort of the needs of employees in an organization for their intranets or other tools and software, that we do need to think carefully about how we group people together during that research phase. If we put a very senior person in a workshop or a focus group with lots of junior people, chances are we won't get that much valuable feedback from the junior people. So you do have to think about that carefully.
And language as well, just to jump off your point there. So, obviously we are a global company, and that's, I think, really normal. Most companies are global and have lots and lots of different languages. So if you have somebody who's, English language skills maybe are not so strong, and you put them in a group with, 100% other people who have English as their first language, you're much less likely to get that person's input because they're not going to feel confident or comfortable. So yeah, language, the language element of what you were just saying there is really important too.
Yeah. And so what are the really interesting things that you found out then from the research? What were the kind of key takeaways that you got?
Oh, so many. I'll try and just pick out a few of the heavy hitters. It was really illuminating. So really, in terms of support and interacting with technology, people like people, and at Fidelity, people really like people an awful lot. The more somebody works within the technology space, so the nearer somebody is to that sort of core technology function, the more comfortable they are engaging with virtual support elements. And the further somebody is away from technology in terms of their daily role, the less comfortable they are interacting with, say, a virtual agent or a chatbot, and also the less comfortable they are self-serving. One of the key takeaways, and I think the thing that has really, blown our world apart, was that there are actually elements of technology support, and this is a generalization, that can make people feel bad. And if people feel bad using something, if they feel stupid, or if they feel judged, or if they're just a little bit afraid because they're not, they perhaps don't consider themselves very technical, or they're not confident using the technology, the less likely they are to engage with the service in any way at all. And they'll put a lot of effort into avoidance and procrastination before they engage with the tool, even though it's something they need to use. And that creates a lot of inefficiency for a company. So that was a key learning for us, and that's something that we've been really working to reduce.
Yeah.
So how people feel about using any kind of digital product really matters.
That kind of reminds me about that other phenomenon that we sometimes see as well when we're it's not necessarily people who aren't comfortable with the technology, but there'll be people who, I think it's called learned incompetence or something like that. There's a phrase where people know it's useful. It's more it's better for them to just not know how to use a system because they can just ask somebody and get somebody else to do the work for them, kind of thing. So they'll kind of you'll have these people in companies who just look up stuff on the intranet for other people. And so that kind of is another factor to consider, I guess, right?
For sure, yeah, and that was a key learning as well. And that there's absolutely this shadow IT support element in our company, and I think in a lot of companies, where there is that one person in a lot of teams that just is sort of the de facto support person because they have a lot of knowledge, or they are considered to be, the technical one in their team. So they are the one that everybody approaches. And you're right. In terms of, I suppose, perceived efficiency, everyone's very, very busy. So it's much easier to use somebody else's brain than it is to, use your own brain to learn something or look it up. There's that standard phrase, isn't there, of "don't make me think." So if you have a product that requires people to think in order to use it, you're kind of already losing. And yeah, that's absolutely something we saw. So one of the key takeaways for us around that kind of shadow IT element was we adjusted some of our messaging because we had to take a decision to meet people where they were. I think it's one of those kind of uncomfortable truths. We all know that shadow IT element exists, but the more comfortable you are with accepting it, the closer you're going to be to solving it. And you're never going to make that go away, but you can accept that people will go to those champions, we're calling them. So we actually started to pull those people in and create a champions network and enable them to become that central person for their team, because it's happening anyway. The alternative is to, not accept it as the truth and try to drive people towards the right product. I don't know about you, but the last time I was forced into a particular route, I don't feel that happy about it. So forcing people never really works that well. And if what you want is to make people happier about using your services, forcing them probably isn't going to be the right method. So yeah, engaging with that shadow IT element and just accepting it for what it was and trying to meet people where they were was another key learning for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and actually, you know, in terms of the measurement of emotion, how do you actually measure people's emotions? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's tricky, as you might imagine.
Yeah,
So working with our research partner, who that's Nile HQ, they shared a scale with us. I'd like to share that with you if that's okay.
sure, yeah.
So critically, although it potentially is on the face of it might seem a little bit facile, you have a scale of places. Um, what this allows you to do, this is anonymized, of course. What this allows you to do is get past that global language barrier that we talked about before.
Mhm.
You don't have the same names for emotions in different cultures and different countries. For example, you have that amazing word Schadenfreude in German,
Mhm.
which is, everyone can reach for that emotion when I say it. We all know what it means, but it takes a sentence in English to explain it. We don't have an equivalent word.
Yeah.
So, in order to have that universal scale, it's actually smarter to step away from language entirely, and use a scale of faces. Everybody knows what these means. What these mean. I could hand this map to somebody in China who doesn't speak any English, and they could probably tell you how Claire's feeling.
Yeah.
Just by looking at this map here. So what we did was we did a number of these exercises, and we had each participant just talk to us about a recent experience, walk us through the milestones of that experience. So what happened, where did it go wrong, where did it go right, and how did they feel at each juncture? And we did many of these. And then when you start to see the trends, that's what gives you that data that you can take away, and match up with your usage data. And what it allows you to do is effectively sort of turn people's emotions into data, to a degree,
Yeah.
which becomes very helpful when you're talking to your stakeholders and that level below your C-suite. Quite often they're very data driven, so it's about meeting people where they are, drawing that connective tissue between the emotions, and looking at it through a lens that people understand and can get connected with.
So this is, I guess, this is kind of qualitative, isn't it? Where you have to sort of spend time with a number of users of a platform to understand what their interaction looked like and what their emotional journey looked like, right? This is their emotional journey completing an interaction or a task.
Yeah,
Is that right? Am I kind of getting that correct?
you're exactly right. Yeah, and it is very time consuming, but it's definitely worth um, getting down to that granular level. As I mentioned, you do a few of these, and those trends start to come through really quickly.
Yeah.
It's actually quite surprising how early on, or how few of these you have to do to start seeing those trends emerging, and then the rest of the exercise is you just verifying those trends that you've identified. Sometimes there are some complete surprises as well. There's always a few cultural elements that you're probably not aware of because you're not immersed in a specific culture or that specific culture, and some of those come through really strongly too.
And so I guess, back to your point about identifying the different types of user and, how close they are to sort of IT and sort of familiarity with tech and, their seniority and stuff like that. I guess that's really important that you understand that first so that you can choose the right people to then look into their emotional journey with, right? So
Yeah,
you've got a representative from different types of employee, if that makes sense. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So one of the exercises that we did, I will just move to my slide. One of the exercises we did was to understand how where people's comfort level was with technology. So again, this is anonymized, but this shows you the global spread, and who was more comfortable using which type of interaction. So a human interaction, or a non-human interaction. You can see the trends come through really clearly. The people in our Asia Pacific offices really like talking to and engaging with people. And it also allows you to highlight any outliers. As you can see, that's what we've done here.
Yeah. So then this is start to give a more quantitative picture of your different audience types, at least by location and their familiarity or likelihood of comfort, I guess, isn't it, with the tools? What do you think about those kind of other techniques for getting quantitative emotional kind of feedback? Like you see, sometimes at the bottom of an intranet page, it might say something like, what did you think of this page? Was it, and it's like a little smiley face to say it was useful, or it was just neutral, or it misled me, is like a sad face kind of thing. What do you think about those kind of things? Can they work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about appropriateness, isn't it, and what you're trying to achieve. So I think because those are less granular and they're obviously a lot more broad, if what you're looking for is a really broad impression, then that's incredibly useful. So you think about when you go to an airport, to use your example, you have the smiley face buttons to press, because what they want to know is, was everything okay? Broadly speaking, how do you feel about it? So pressing one of three faces is going to get you the answer that you're looking for. I think if you're using a digital ecosystem, that type of method is perhaps not quite granular enough. But I think most people, if you hit a neutral or a bad, will then require somebody to enter a bit more detail. And then again, you've got all sorts of methods for picking out trends. I really like a word cloud myself.
Good, yeah. And so it can be useful, but it depends on the way you execute that, I guess, right? Because I guess if you just roll something like that out without any sort of curation, or like you say, you diving in and asking for more information, if they give negative feedback, then you would generally have a tendency to just get, like, if you're just looking at how many sad faces versus how many happy faces, you'll almost certainly get more sad faces, just because of that tendency for people to give a negative reaction. Right. And whereas if they're happy, that's it, they're gone. They've got their information. They're not going to spend time saying, "Oh, I was really happy with this." So you've kind of got to interrogate it a bit more, right? You can't just rely on the raw numbers, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. So having that next level of detail, especially when you've got the negative feedback, is really important. You're quite right. People are much less likely to tell you if they love something, or I think in my experience, it's those extremes of emotion, isn't it? If people love something and think it's amazing, they definitely want to tell you. If they hate it and it made them cross,
yeah, true,
they definitely want to tell you.
Yeah. And so, just thinking about, like the examples of like intranets, that we're often rolling out for customers, I guess, is we'd like for people to be very excited and really enthusiastic about using the internet, but the reality is that a good result normally is just that they get the information they're looking for and they go quickly with that information and they go and perform that task or whatever it is. So we don't really expect them to be gushing in praise about about the experience, but it is still a positive emotion they get from the experience. So tell me about, like, in terms of mapping, is it possible to map the sort of emotional journey data alongside like other standard traffic information about the use of a platform? Do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
So I should probably just call out that I'm not a researcher. I'm just an enthusiast in this space. Personally, where I have used this sort of data is alongside usage data, so alongside those volumetrics, to create a kind of a connective tissue in between that 30,000 foot view and the 3-foot view, if you like. Because what you have is your usage data, and quite often you might be asked questions of, why do people in this region not ever use these pages, or why do people in these regions never read these particular emails? And those sorts of questions are often what you're getting asked. And you can see the what in the usage data, but the why comes from the emotional journey mapping. And what the research allowed us to do was to create a line between those two things. So we could see the what, we could see that people in, I'm going to pick a country at random, let's say Japan, were not using a particular service very much. And when we dug into the emotional journeys, it's because they really didn't like it. There were a lot of reasons behind that, but ultimately they found it difficult to use. It was painful. It made them feel, uncomfortable. So they just didn't use it. They just avoided it entirely. So I think the emotional journeys really help as an example that allow you to demonstrate the why behind the what, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this kind of research and analysis gives you insight into why a platform might be failing for a particular audience, let's say, but it doesn't really give you the answers to how to fix that necessarily, because that's contextual, right? That's going to be based on a design decision relating to the feedback you get. There's no magic bullet for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if all you ever do is look at usage data in isolation, it's an echo chamber effectively. If you really want to make a change, you have to get to the root of why the usage data is what it is. You can't look at usage data, in my opinion, you can't look at usage data in isolation. But the emotional journey mapping just allows you to sort of take 2D data and turn it into a 4D story, with a human element. And that's the part that I think people really connect with.
Do you think, is there like a sort of a magic number of people that you could plot their emotional journey with in order to get meaningful insights and results? Because I mean, the reason I ask this is because we think about when we do usability testing, for example, we can't possibly get everyone in an organization to test, but if we do a session with 10 different people, chances are we'll probably pick up, arguably 80% of issues from that set of 10 people. So yeah, any thoughts on that, kind of the numbers of people you'd need to involve?
Yeah, and so I really agree with your assessment there. I asked our research partner the same thing, because we were getting a lot of feedback from our stakeholders that our participant group was too small. They were very concerned about it, but the researchers assured us and said, actually, you really only need quite a small number as a minimum. Obviously, more is better. But once you get past 10, really all you're doing is just verifying your findings, because those trends will come through really strongly. With a relatively small participant group, I don't think I would want to go smaller than 10 unless it was a much smaller company. But 10's definitely a good minimum. It's a good floor to have, I think.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And in terms of like the other people involved in this sort of project, I'm thinking not about the end users, but the stakeholders who are kind of maybe have sanctioned this research and this investigation. How did they respond to seeing sort of emotional journey information? What was their response to it?
Yeah, it is. It does depend on the person, doesn't it? So knowing your audience is really important. As I mentioned earlier, we chose the graphs and the charts to present, because people at that senior stakeholder level, and certainly budget holders and budget owners, they really like data, and emotions are quite hard to present as data, although not impossible, as I've shared. So I think it's about knowing your audience and understanding where their area of interest is and how can you draw a line between that and the emotional journey mapping. So we knew that our budget holders were very, very data driven. So we knew it was really important for us to come at it from that angle. And also there's a lot of focus on efficiency, as I think is really common across most industries at the moment. So we also use the emotional journey mapping to try and create some efficiencies. If I can share an example with you.
Sure.
So if we take the example of Claire again, and this is that same emotional journey that we were looking at earlier as an example, what we were able to do is, this is the actual journey, or the actual example journey. And then what we did was map out a future state. So, and then you can actually present those two in tandem. Don't worry too much about reading the content here, because I'm going to skip on and you'll see what I mean. So you've got the blue line here that represents the example actual journey. And then
Yeah.
you've got the green line, which is the ideal journey, the ideal future state. And what you do is you highlight these moments that matter, which are these low points here. And then you actually go a little bit more granular. So you might want to go back to that research participant and really talk through, what happened here? This is how you felt. This is how you told us you felt. What would have made the difference for you? What would have made this better? Some of that will be achievable. Perhaps some of it won't, or
Yep.
it might mean that you'll need to tweak it as a solution or delivery person to work out how to elevate that. So then you identify experience elevators. It means that you're being really, really targeted about any effort.
Yeah.
Which means you're being very efficient with how you're spending any budget on, work or improvements or development that needs to be done. Budget holders really like to hear that. So it means you can, rather than throwing the whole process or the whole tool out in the bin, it doesn't work, people hate it. Actually, you can say, what, we're going to be really targeted. We're going to change this email. We're going to change this interface. We're going to change how the SLAs or the timeline is managed. And those are our experience elevators. It lifts up the whole journey so that you're maybe not exactly in line with that future state, but you're a lot closer to it. And then, of course, you want to circle back to your research participant after the fact and say, how did we do? Is this now better for you? Would this work better for you? And it means that you're being a lot more efficient about how you're using that budget.
And then I guess you can just do a follow-up analysis after you've implemented these changes to see, have we got to that, desired green line, right? And
right.
now, as a result of the
for
changes.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's another measurement as well that I wanted to share with you just as we're on the subject. If we think about the original journey here, and we were talking about usage data a little while ago, and one of the reasons this is so important is because if all you do is look at usage data in isolation, what that's telling you is that here's Claire engaging with the support framework, her problem gets fixed, she goes away happy or moderately happy.
Yeah.
But that's clearly not the whole story. And what you've got preceding this is a whole lot of wastage, a whole lot of inefficiency and avoidance. And that's Claire, not doing what the company pays her to do. All of that impacts the company's bottom line. It's subtle, but it is an impact. And that's important to understand, that how somebody feels about using a certain tool or digital ecosystem actually can impact the company's bottom line. And looking at usage data in isolation just tells you from this point onwards. So really what you want to do, it's not just about how quickly you fulfill the request once you hit this point. It's about how you remove all of that wastage that precedes that point.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're going to be doing is asking people when they do hit our support framework, how long have you had this issue for? Or how long did you wait before you reported this? Because that allows us to measure whether we're managing to attack this this period of avoidance and wastage. And that is something that you can measure.
And measure is a good word here, because you are measuring that, right? And so one of the things that traditionally is, it can be a bit difficult with intranets is to prove ROI, return on investment, for making a big update to the internet and making improvements, because I guess people can always say, well, this information is on our intranet today. I mean, our intranet may just be a set of folders that you browse through to get stuff, but it's there. People can get it, so why do we need to spend money making the internet better? And but actually, if using this sort of analysis, you can say, well, here's the current picture of the emotional journey for people using those folders to find information, and then actually that would immediately, I think, make people sit up and listen and say, oh, okay, actually, this doesn't look good. All that wastage, as you put it, is terrible. Sure. It's obviously terrible. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite points. I call it the captive audience concept. As service providers internally, one of the key learnings that we took away from this research exercise was that our internal customers, employees, have the exact same expectations of us as they do any external service. the internal service providers don't always have that same perception. There's that, I think there's a pervading sense, not specific to Fidelity, but I think it's fairly common, which is, well, they're a captive audience, where else are they going to go? They have to use it. But as we saw from Claire's journey there, that's what happens. That's what a captive audience that doesn't enjoy using your digital ecosystem, that's what that looks like. All of that wastage, all of that avoidance. And as I said, that impacts the company's bottom line. So, this journey mapping really allows you to bring that point home to anybody who is challenging, that ROI point. And also, not everything that has value is measurable. And I think it's important to be able to have an honest conversation about that. And when you are challenged on providing or proving ROI, it's quite tempting to respond and say, yep, absolutely, we're going to measure everything. Here are the measurements we're going to give you. We can prove ROI, no problem. But I think that, there is an alternative response to that. And that is, that actually there are lots of intangibles as well that are not measurable, but we know they provide value. The example I always like to use is, does everybody think that, team building and team building exercises and team building days has value? Do we all think that that's a useful thing to do? Generally, everybody says yes. And then I say, prove it.
Yeah.
There are lots of examples out there of things that we all know have value, we all know have benefit, and you can't necessarily always draw a straight line from one to the other. So there are things that you can measure and there are things that you can't, and they all provide value just the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's a good example. The sort of the team building and teamwork one, right? Where you say to somebody, "Well, just prove to me that teamwork is worth the investment." It's like, well, we just sort of intuitively know that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, because we're humans.
Yeah. So what's next? What do you plan to do next, either with this, sort of this platform, this project, or in other areas?
Yeah, so right now I am busy delivering the alternative replatformed option that started off this entire journey, and I'm so close to delivery, nearly there, just in the final push, and that's going to contain an awful lot of adjustments that we've carried forward from this piece of research. So I'm really excited to go back and retest with all of our research participants. Actually, we kept them with us the whole way through. It has been quite a lengthy process, but as they were engaged and we spent, they gave us so much of their time, we really wanted to really show them what we did with the information they gave us. They gave us some of their time, they sacrificed, so we wanted to prove that we did something good with that time sacrifice. So we've been using that same research participant group as our testers, business UAT testers. And then, once my solution goes live, we'll be circling back around and asking them again how we did, get them to measure our progress and see if we've got anything else that we can learn from them and take forward.
And do you also use those people not just to sort of validate and test and that and make sure what you're doing is working, but do they play any kind of role in that more sort of traditional champion type scenario where they advocate as well, for the solution?
Damn, you're on to me, John. That was my secret. Yes, we will be hoping that they are going to advocate for us, and spread the word out there in the business and in their teams, and help us with our engagement going forward.
Yeah, it reminds me that sometimes, like during the sort of this discovery phase of a project where we're doing the research and listening to users and stakeholders, and we actually sort of actively try to involve naysayers as well at that stage, because by involving people in the design process, you sort of naturally turn them into advocates. Because they feel listened to, they see that you target the things that they've said are pain points, and they see you trying to fix them. And if you do fix them successfully, they're just immediately converted. So it can be really powerful as a sort of a mechanism to involve people in the process, right?
Yeah, I love that. It's quite sneaky, and so I'm a big fan already of that as an approach.
Yeah. Okay, so what would be your like kind of top tips for anyone who is sort of trying to tackle this and do some research into, you know, the emotions of their user base?
I would say probably start small. It is quite time consuming, so don't be tempted to take a percentage of your user base and go after that as a group of research participants. It's fine to start small. Expect it to take a long time, but you know, expect the results to be quite explosive. Be ready for some surprises. And obviously be open to that. As I mentioned, there were some cultural touch points that we weren't expecting. Um, and as you come across those, you may need to adjust how you're approaching the research, if you do hit any of those cultural differences. So yeah, you might need to be ready to adjust.
Excellent. And is there anywhere that people can know can find out more about this subject? Are there any kind of good resources that you kind of consulted or you're aware of that people might, you know, turn to?
Yeah, I did a lot of quite broad reading around this subject. It's absolutely fascinating to me. So, a huge fan of Simon Sinek's that I think it's called The Power of Why. Um, and also a little bit left field, but bear with me. There's a great book by Brene Brown, and actually anything by Brene Brown is fantastic. But she's done a great book called The Atlas of the Heart. I know that sounds like a kind of a Mills and Boon book, but what it is um, it's actually detailing each emotion and how it presents. Because emotions can come in disguise. Sometimes emotions will present as one, but they're actually another. And she details really, really cleverly the differences and how you can identify them, and the ones that seem similar but are actually different. And that was a huge learning for me, because there have been emotions I've been mislabeling for a really long time, and that blew some of the research wide open, actually. So I highly recommend that.
Great, excellent. Okay, thank you very much for your time, Lucy. Really appreciate you joining us and sharing that advice. It's really brilliant.
Thank you, John. Such a pleasure. Cheers.